What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and welcome to another My Hero Academia video. In this video, we will be discussing one of the most highly requested topics that keeps popping up in the comments to all of our Boku no Hero videos, and that is the question of who is the UA Traitor. In this video, I will discuss the most popular theories about the UA Traitor's true identity, and I will then proceed to provide some of my own theories as well. Before we get started, I just want to make clear that the theories I'm going to discuss here are just speculation, so they are not spoilers in and of themselves. However, this video will contain manga spoilers that I need to talk about in order to properly explain all the theories, so if you haven't read the manga, proceed with caution. If you enjoy these types of theory videos and want to see more, be sure to leave a like to let me know. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you want to help us decide what type of videos to make next, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Anime Uproar, link in the description. In chapter 83 of the manga, Present Mike first brings up the idea that there must be a traitor at UA because only the teachers and the pro hero team, the Pussycats, knew where the students' training camp would be located, and yet the villains found them anyway. In chapter 98, the highly intelligent Principal Nezu confirms that he also thinks that there is a traitor when he says that making the students live in dormitories on the UA campus will both keep the students safe and help to smoke out the traitor. Now, there are people who don't think that there is a traitor at all because the villains might simply be using a quirk no one knows about, like a long-range mind-reading quirk or something along those lines, to gather the information they need. However, with the amount of emphasis that has been placed on there being a traitor in chapters 83 and 98, I think that from a storytelling perspective, it makes sense to follow through and actually bring a traitor into the story. Assuming that the traitor is someone we know and not a teacher we haven't met yet or something along those lines, there have been quite a few theories out there about which of the characters we already know could be the spy and traitor. One popular theory that I've come across quite a bit is that Denki Kaminari could be the UA traitor because his quirk, electrification, allows him to generate and manipulate electricity and affect electronic devices, which would make Kaminari well suited for the job of a spy. His quirk could allow him to mess with electronic devices so that he could communicate with people without anyone detecting it, and he may also be able to jam electronic signals. A lot of people have also pointed out that the original design for Kaminari's character was changed by Horikoshi because he felt that Kaminari looked too much like a villain. So some are taking this as a clue that Kaminari was intended to be a villain from the start. Personally, while I think that Kaminari's quirk definitely could come in handy to a spy in the modern world full of electronic devices, there is just nothing close to solid evidence or motive for Kaminari to be the traitor. In terms of his original character design appearing villainous, I think that My Hero Academia has gone out of its way numerous times to tell us that we shouldn't judge a character just by their appearance. So I don't think that Kaminari's appearance alone would be a good argument. Also, the drawback of Kaminari's quirk is that if he uses it too much, he will short-circuit his own brain and become completely useless and helpless for an hour, which would be a terrible drawback for a villain to have while they're risking everything to infiltrate the UA as a traitor. Now, perhaps Kaminari's drawback is just an elaborate act of some kind and he doesn't really become useless after using too much power. Maybe he just wants others to see him as harmless to draw suspicion away from himself, but this just seems to be stretching it quite far, and until we get additional evidence, I am not prepared to support the Kaminari traitor theory. Police detective and All Might's friend Naomasa Tsukauchi has also been identified as a potential suspect because he has close connections to UA through his friend All Might, but since he works for the police, he is able to move about freely in and out of the school without drawing suspicion. However, in order to accept that Tsukauchi could be the traitor, we have to also accept that he was able to fool veteran pro heroes like All Might and Gran Torino into trusting him for years. This would make All Might look like a pretty terrible judge of character, since he even trusted Tsukauchi enough to tell him the secret of One for All. And from everything we've seen about Tsukauchi, he seems to be doing his best to track down and stop the villains rather than help them. So I would need a major piece of evidence suggesting that Tsukauchi has been lying or something like that before I believe that he could be the traitor. Hitoshi Shinso from Class 1C or the General Department at UA has been identified by some as a potential traitor suspect. And this accusation stems mostly from the nature of his brainwashing quirk, which allows him to control anyone that replies to one of his questions verbally. Now obviously a quirk like this would be incredibly useful for a spy, as he could manipulate people into revealing sensitive information, and he could also force them to do whatever he wants. In fact, because of the type of quirk he has, as a child Shinso was teased by other children who told him that he would end up becoming a villain, and Shinso is shown to be resentful of other UA students who have quirks that are more suited to being a hero than his own is. It is also possible that because his quirk works only on living creatures, the reason that he couldn't get into the UA hero program is because the entrance exam involved robotic opponents, which essentially made Shinso's quirk useless. Is it possible that Shinso thought this was unfair and became so resentful that he decided to take his revenge on the whole system by becoming a villain? Yes, it is possible, but we have to remember that from what we know about Shinso so far, we can see that he goes out of his way to show that he wants to be a hero despite the nature of his quirk. To me, he seems more interested in proving everyone wrong by being heroic rather than giving up and becoming a villain. But let me know what you think about Shinso and where his story will go from here in the comments below. The next suspect is Fumikage Tokoyami. My good friend and fellow YouTuber Nuxtaku hasn't read the manga yet, even though he really likes the anime, but he thinks that Tokoyami looks like a good logical suspect to be the UA traitor because of his character design and mysterious quirk. And while it is true that the fact that Tokoyami loses control of his quirk, Dark Shadow, at times can be seen as suspicious. For example, we know that at night when his quirk is most powerful, and at times when Tokoyami is feeling strong emotions like anger, Dark Shadow can actually take over and go on a wild rampage like it did during the school trip arc. However, we should also remember that during the same school trip arc, the villains actually tried to kidnap Tokoyami along with Bakugo because they thought that his quirk looked very impressive. So it seems that the Vanguard Action Squad at the very least did not have prior knowledge of Tokoyami, which would imply that he is not one of them. Again, there is no evidence that Tokoyami is the traitor, and for that reason I am not prepared to accept this theory. Some people have also suggested that teachers like Ectoplasm may be the traitor because Ectoplasm just looks so much like a villain, but again, I strongly feel that My Hero Academia teaches us that we should never judge someone as a person just by their looks or by their quirk. So I don't think that someone supposedly looking like a villain or having a quirk that looks like it will be good for a villain means that they are the traitor. Probably the best UA traitor theory that I've come across thus far is that the invisible girl, Toru Hakagure, is the UA traitor. In fact, in a very well researched and comprehensive video, a YouTuber known as Joyboy Theories made a strong case for Toru being the UA traitor. I will leave a link to this video in the description. I definitely recommend checking it out, but to sum up his arguments quickly, he points out that Toru is never seen directly fighting against the villains. In chapter 12, she appears to be absent from the school at a very conspicuous time, on the same day that the villains breached UA. During the USJ arc, Toru's location is unknown for the entire time. Afterwards, she claims that she was transported to the landslide area, but there is evidence that she might be lying about this. And this is because the landslide area is the place where Todoroki was also transported, and he froze the entire area as soon as he arrived. And yet, Toru does not appear to have been frozen. Toru was also the one who first suggested that members of Class 1A should go shopping together. And on that very same day, at that same shopping mall, Shigaraki confronted confronts Deku. The implication here is that Shigaraki knew he would find Deku there because Toru gave him a heads up. Finally, Toru could have potentially contacted the villains during the school trip arc and informed them about the location of the lodge. However, even though these are really interesting arguments, there is no smoking gun here, as much of it could be explained away as Horikoshi simply not bothering to give us enough info about Toru and her activities just yet. The shopping mall encounter between Shigaraki and Deku could also be explained away by the fact that many people recognized Class 1A students right away because they watched them fight in the tournament. So technically, any of these random people could have informed Shigaraki that Deku was at the mall. At any rate, Joy Boy Theories goes into the arguments in much greater detail, so check that out if you're interested in this theory in particular. And I also like the fact that he pronounces My Hero Academia the same way that I do. But if Toru is the traitor, it is likely that there is more than one traitor at UA, because during the Hideout Raid arc, All For One somehow appeared to know ahead of time what the plans of the police were, despite the fact that at this time Toru would not have access to this information. One other thing that I thought of while thinking about Toru as the traitor is what her motivations could possibly be. If she was just a regular student, why would she possibly want to work with the villains? We don't know enough about her background to know if she has an ordinary family situation or if something is off there, because presumably if she has normal parents that she lives with, they would not want her to have anything to do with villains. But there is a potential wild card, and that is the fact that the only other character besides Toru that we know can turn themselves invisible is League of Villains member Himiko Toga. Toga's quirk Transform allows her to change her appearance to look like another person if she consumes enough of their blood. But as we learned during the Hero License exam arc, Toga can also become invisible if she holds her breath and keeps her mind clear. If we remember that similar quirks tend to run in the family in the world of My Hero Academia, then perhaps Toga is somehow related to Toru. Again, no direct evidence for this, but if this were true, it would begin to give us some potential motive for why Toru would want to become a traitor. I will talk more about Toga at the end of this video, but now let's discuss the next suspect. The next traitor suspect that I want to talk about is none other than Principal Nezu himself. Nezu is the only animal we know of that has a quirk. His quirk, of course, gives him incredibly high intelligence, and we know that he has the physical features of multiple animals, including a bear, a dog, and a mouse. And speaking of mice, in chapter 158 of the manga, we learned that one theory states that the origin of all quirks was a virus that might have been carried by mice and then spread to humans. This to me suggests that mice were being experimented on by humans, as mice are commonly used for scientific experimentation. Perhaps humans were experimenting on mice in an attempt to create some sort of super soldier for the military or something along those lines, and the result was a virus which led to the development of quirks. A virus which was later spread to humans. Since the structure of a virus can change in the body of every individual host, it would make sense for different people with this virus to develop completely different quirks. During the final exams arc, we learned that Nezu was mistreated by humans at some point in his life, and for this reason, when he is in combat, he can be very devious and even enjoys toying with humans. So what if this abuse at the hands of humans was actually some form of experimentation, and these experiments are the reason why he developed a quirk in the first place, despite the fact that he is an animal? Furthermore, it is important to remember at this point that the Nomu were once normal humans who were experimented on by All For One and infused with the DNA of multiple different people until these creatures were no longer able to think for themselves and were only capable of obeying commands. So what if Principal Nezu was an early Nomu experiment? What if Nezu is an animal Nomu infused with the DNA of multiple different animals, which would explain both why he has the features of multiple animals and why he is the only animal we know with a quirk? Perhaps Nezu was an early version of the Nomu before the process was perfected, and instead of making him incapable of thinking for himself, the experiment actually made him extremely intelligent by accident. We know that Principal Nezu has intimate knowledge of the UA, so much so that if he was the traitor, we wouldn't need a second suspect, he would be enough. This is because Nezu had access to both the information about where the student lodge was located during the school trip arc and the information about the plans of the police during the hideout raid arc, so he could definitely be the traitor. But even though this theory came to me organically as I was researching for this video, I still have one big problem with it. Nezu seems like a truly nice person overall who genuinely cares about the UA students. So why would he possibly put the lives of his students at risk and side with the villains? Well, think about this. What if Nezu is the traitor, but he isn't actually a villain? What if All For One did indeed experiment on Nezu and somehow manipulated him into leaking information to the villains? What if during the experiment sometime in the past, All For One was somehow able to brainwash Nezu into reporting back to him without even realizing it? Or what if All For One implanted some sort of device into Nezu that Nezu doesn't even know about, and this device is allowing All For One to monitor Nezu's actions? I am hesitant to believe that Nezu is a truly evil character, but I can definitely see him being an unwitting and or unwilling traitor in this case. Let me know what you think of the Principal Nezu traitor theory down below. It is definitely the theory that I personally think is most likely at this point. After all, Principal Nezu's mysterious background, his strange appearance which seems to indicate some sort of experimentation, coupled with the fact that he had all the information that the traitor would have required, really does make me think that he could be the traitor. Finally, I will leave you with a theory that is completely outlandish and I don't expect you to believe it for a second, but it came to me suddenly and it was so crazy that I just had to share it just for fun. What if Toru Hakagure doesn't even exist? In the more recent My Hero Academia chapters, we saw Himiko Toga and Twice working together and scheming against the 8 precepts. And of course, we know about the existence of the drug Trigger, which amplifies to a massive extent the power of quirks. We also know that Toga has the ability to temporarily turn invisible. And we know that Twice has the power to create clones out of other people. So what if at some point in the past, Twice cloned Toga, and with the help of the drug Trigger, this second Toga was able to remain invisible for longer periods of time, and she infiltrated the UA as Toru Hakagure. We can safely assume that the traitor was infiltrated into the UA by All For One himself, as Shigaraki seems to have no knowledge of the traitor, and of course All For One has a habit of concealing certain important facts from Shigaraki. This crazy theory that Toru is actually a Toga clone assumes that All For One came into contact with Toga and Twice before they ever met Shigaraki and organized this whole thing well ahead of time. This theory also assumes that Toru does not have parents or extended family that can vouch for her actually being who she says she is, unless the real Toru does exist but was at some point kidnapped by All For One and replaced with the Toga clone. While this theory would solve the problem of motive, or the lack thereof, for Toru becoming the traitor, it is so outlandish that I don't actually expect you to believe it, and I only shared it with you just for fun. But I do think that something like this would be an insane plot twist that no one would see coming. But that is it for this video, guys. There are clearly a lot of interesting theories out there. Personally, I think that Principal Nezu is the traitor, even though he might not actually be aware of it. Feel free to let me know what you think down in the comments. I really want to get a good discussion going. Did I miss any suspects that you think could be the traitor? Let me know down below. If you enjoy these types of videos and want to see more, be sure to leave a like to let me know. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell. Also, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Anime Uproar to help us decide which videos to make next. And until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.